Sabi nung all these years, puro ka praises ng praises sa akin. Tapos ngayon sabihin mo, corrupt. Saan corruption? Marami na, pero napaalis na. Naunahan na kita.
Amid this word war between Pacquiao and Duterte, former Senator Antonio Trillanes says he will expose the corruption under the president and his former aide, Senator Bongo.
Maliwanag na ginamit ni Bongo ang kanyang posisyon in connivance with and obvious consent of Duterte as mayor and later on as president para makinabang ang kanyang pamilya.
Former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV has accused President Duterte and Senator Bongo of plundering more than 6 billion pesos worth of road projects within the Davao region. Did Senator Bongo use his position to benefit his family? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special edition of The Chiefs. I'm Robbie Lampay. Also with us are Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5, and Ed Lingao of One News. Chiefs, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday, but
although it was
a tragic
start to the week. Bok, kanina I was talking to Manny Mogato about the C-130s. I think there are remaining 4 C-130s that have now been grounded. I know you cover the military a lot, Bok. I mean, what do we know about our fleet? Bok?
Yung dalawa lang, I think dalawa lang operational ngayon di ba?
Dalawa operational. So we're down to 50% operational capacity because you now only have 1 operational. The others are under repair. I used to say na the C-130 is the plane you're least likely to die in. And I think that still holds true. Unfortunate itong nangyari, pero it's not what you typically expect of a C-130.
And not only that, it was just recently acquired, in January, So kung tutusin, hindi pa siya yung wear and tear factor, wala pa doon, 'di ba? So
11,000 kilometers pa daw yung flying hours o miles ba yun? Before the next maintenance. Kasi kahit second hand siya.
So matagal-tagal pa, no?
Flying hours, not kilometers. The flying hours. 11,000 pa. Saka hindi ba alam, tapos seasoned naman daw yung mga yung mga pilots. And all the landing protocols that were followed. O hindi natin malaman.
Well,
we don't really know yet if all the landing protocols were followed kasi
sabi ni Arevalo kanina.
Yeah, I know, but you still have to wait for the data to come in because the only way people would know whether or not the right airspeed was used was if you have the instruments. You can't just look at it and see.
The data recorder will, it's the data recorder
that'll mean a lot,
that will clearly tell us
the
what
airspeed
happened.
and where exactly it touched down in Polo, which is a short runway.
Nag-bounce daw 3 times bago nag-overshoot.
In any case, these are the details that I'm sure we'll be following, and it's hard to speculate, but obviously an investigation is underway, and so we'll be following that story. In the meantime, let's start tonight's episode. Let's begin with former Senator Antonio Trillanes. Good evening, Senator Trillanes.
Evening,
Good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Good evening, sir.
Ms. Ami, Ms. Lucy, and Ed. And sa ating mga viewers.
Sir, diretso po tayo sa let's start with first of all, I know there was already a PCIJ report on this in 2018. You picked that up. You already made those accusations in 2018. How different are the things that you're saying now? And I guess equally important is ano ba nangyari doon sa 2018 na expose nyo? May nangyari ba doon?
Actually, nung ni-report po ito ng PCIJ, immediately nag-issue ako ng resolution para nga makuha natin lahat ng mga datos. So, ang nangyari po nito, nakuha ko yung mga data na binigay ng COA towards the end of my term. At after that, because of the pandemic, hindi namin na-sort out yung mga documents. early this year, dito namin ito nakita ulit at napag-aralan. Ano? Kaya ngayon po natin nilabas ito. How different is this? Ngayon nakita na natin yung buong storya. So ang covered nung mga documents pa lang na ni-request ko noon ay from 2007 hanggang yung latest, which was 2018. Kaya yun yung na-cover ng mga dokumento. So binigay ng COA ito lahat and nabigay ko na sa mga reporters ninyo yung scanned copies nitong COA documents, pati yung DTI, kung saan nakita natin na talagang yung tatay ni Bongo, yung may-ari ng CLTG, which stands for the initials ni Christopher Lawrence Tesoro Go or si Bongo, no? May-ari niyan, tatay niya, and yung Alfredo Builders na ang pagmamay-ari ng half-brother niya. Tapos yung covered na duration na yan, ang total is 6.6 billion pesos yung total transactions. 1.5 nung mayor pa lang si Duterte, siya yung approving authority, at 5.1 billion pesos nung presidente na siya. Ito ang nakuha nung na proyekto nung tatay at kapatid ni Bongo. So, ito, nabuo yung picture. This is different in the sense na kompleto na yung mga documents at ito binigay ko ito sa mga reporters sa media which they can verify kung nagsasabi ako ng totoo o hindi.
Pero sir, I think the question of a lot of people is of course, there is a question of propriety, and I think that's where the PCIJ report takes off from na whether or not it was proper or improper for somebody in that kind of a position's family to get all these documents, which would be, I suppose, a starting point for an investigation. Pero moving forward, kasi ang gusto po nyo i-plunder case, how do you intend to prove that there was actual stealing of at least 50 million pesos by the family of Bongo? What if they can prove, for example, that there was nothing anomalous in the documents or in the contracts or the billings?
Very straightforward po yung definition ng ating plunder. Ang sinasabi dito, kapag nakamas ng ill-gotten wealth worth 50 million or above, yan. Ngayon, ano yung ill-gotten wealth? Nakalagay dito 6 instances kung paano. Yung number 6 nakalagay dito, by taking undue advantage of official position, authority, relationship, connection, or influence to unjustly enrich himself or themselves at the expense and to the damage and prejudice of the Filipino people. Hindi mo pwedeng, kung ikaw yung approving authority at kasama to, may influence ka by virtue of your position, na makukuha ng pamilya mo yung proyekto. So it's straightforward. So pagka nabigyan siya ng proyekto, ito ngayon, hindi mo na kailangan i-prove yung iba kasi, yung mga congressman o mga mayor na nangungurakot ng ganitong racket din, meron silang dummies, pinapangalan nila sa iba, yung kanilang construction company, para kung i-award man nila doon, walang connection. Dito, wala, straightforward. So yung the very definition of plunder, ginawa nila Bongo, regardless whether straightforward yung transaction na bidding or kompleto man yung projects, hindi man overpriced, pero ang nagbenepisyo yung pamilya mo by virtue of your position or influence.
Yes, sir. But sir, how do you prove that, sir? I mean, this is all theoretical, siyempre, di ba? Because in the end, it I suppose will go to court. Pero how will you prove in court na Mr. Bongo took advantage of his position to get the contracts? Because the court will ask that how do you prove? Maliban sa blood relations at maliban doon sa fact that the contracts were awarded, there has to be some sort of a connection proven in court.
Alam niyo, nakalagay dito, straightforward yung batas. Kaya nga sinasabi dito, plunder, kapag ka ang nagbenepisyo, ang nabigyan mo ng kontrata, yung kamag-anak mo. Kasi hindi pwede sila magbenepisyo. So yan yun,
Senator, I mean, basic question, Senator. I mean, by that definition, are you saying that the company should not even have been in any position to even bid for the award?
Yes, definitely. Kasi meron silang alam natin na special assistant to the president, itong si Bongo. Ngayon, imagine niyo, no? Kung tayo pa ang magpo-prove na kung may kung nakinabang siya diyan o hindi, itatay niya eh. Tsaka imagine dito kung gaano ka swerte naman itong contractor na ito, 5 billion pesos, ano? Kasi kung hindi natin ito mapoprove na plunder or kailangan pa natin ito i-prove na plunder, imagine lahat ng congressman mabibigay nila sa mga yung kontrata sa kapatid nila, tatay nila, and say, hindi, wala naman akong kinalaman dyan, straightforward naman yan. No, kaya nga ho natin ginawa itong plunder law as defined this way.
Pero hindi ho ba, pag nagka-qualify ng mga bidders, di ba may very strict din sila, may set of questionnaires para nga malaman kung anong kumpanya ka, anong paid up capital mo, etc. etc. And then, pati ownership, di ba, binabantayan nga yan precisely para siguraduhin. So, I guess what you're saying is the dragnet is even bigger. It goes far beyond kasi DPWH din yan, DILG din yan. I mean, ang daming hawa-hawa dito.
Maraming makukulong po rito. And kaya nga sinabi ko rito, with consent of Duterte, who is the approving authority. Kaya ganyan po yung definition ng plunder. Para hindi nila alam nyo, yung mga congressman nga, yung mga mayor, sabi ko, they try to circumvent the law by putting up dummies. Ano? Pero ito hindi. Talagang tatay niya at kapatid niya. So nakuha natin yung relationship, nakuha natin yung mga documents, nakapirma yung tatay, yung kapatid. Walang ikot dito. This is an airtight case. Plunder po ito. So
Senator,
6.6 billion divided by 50. That's the number of plunder cases we can file.
Senator, bago po yan makulong, kailangan pila ng kaso. Are you planning to be the one to initiate? Kasi ang sagot ng Malacanang kanina, lumang tugtugi na daw yan. Saka balak nyo daw kasi yung tumakbong presidente at namumuliti ka lang kayo. That's why you dredge up an old case. Yun ang sabi nila.
Alam niyo po, this is not the first time that I've been doing this. Kung maalala ninyo, noong 2016 pa lang, sinasabi ko na sa inyo lahat, sa buong sambayanan, na kurakot ito si Duterte. Meron siyang 2.2 billion pesos sa BPI bank accounts niya. At ito, sinasabi lang, ilalabas sila, no? Naalala nyo, nag-stand off kami doon. Pumunta ako ron, hindi siya sumipot. Tapos, hinahamon ko siya magpirma ng waiver, hindi. Pero yung ombudsman natin, the Deputy Ombudsman Arthur Carandang in particular, pursued the investigation. Final ko po yung kaso na yun. Anong ginawa? Nag-investigate yung ombudsman at na-find out niya, nagbigay ng dokumento yung AMLAC sa kanila, kinumpare niya, sabi niya parehas. So billions yung transactions. Anong ginawa ni Duterte? Pinatanggal niya yung Deputy Ombudsman ngayon. So ngayon, andito tayo sa predicament na to. Pag final natin ito, gagamitin niya yung kapangyarihan niya to stop the investigation or to whitewash the investigation. Kaya sabi ko, if a-file ko ito, pag wala na sila sa pwesto, which is just around the corner, next year, mawawala na itong mga ito. So, file natin yan to make sure na wala na silang undue influence sa kaso.
So, hindi nyo yan if-file ngayon while we're heading for elections.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Ito po, sabi ko nga, I gave the media copies of these documents. Anybody can file actually. Pero sinasabi ko rito, gagamitin lang ni Duterte yung kapangyarihan niya. Just like what happened nung 2016 doon sa final ko na plunder case sa kanya using the BPI documents. Ngayon, hindi ito sasabihin na eleksyon. Teka muna, sabi ni Duterte, hindi naman ni Bongo, hindi naman siya kandidato anong connection nun, di ba? Tapos I have been doing this the past 5 years.
Yes, but Senator,
yes.
sa kabilang banda naman po, sasabihin din naman ng ibang mga tao, and they would be, to say it, until i-file nyo yan, this will be playing out in public, they will be playing out in media. For you to make these very serious accusations and then not lodge it in a proper forum where the people you're accusing will have a chance to refute and to see any evidence you might want to present, is also unfair. And that's where they're coming from. Na parang hanggat hindi mo sinasampayan, puro ingay lang to, puro paratang lang to.
Well, ito po, no, sabi ko nga, no, binigay ko po ito sa mga reporters ninyo. COA, andito yung mga pangalan. You can easily verify it kung nagsasabi ko ng totoo o hindi. Hindi lang naman ako eh. Ito no. I gave everybody a copy. So kung gusto niyo i-file, you can do that also as a citizen, as a taxpayer. Ako kasi, by kumbaga, legal strategy, bakit ko ngayon pipilitin ito? Na alam kong iwa-whitewash, baka magkawalaan pa yung mga dokumentong ito. Antayin ko na lang pagka medyo sigurado na para kulong talaga ito mga taong ito.
Okay.
Well, hindi nga rin po maiwasan na ma-connect talaga dahil unang-una ngayon nyo pa fina-file kung kailan lumulutang na naman nga yung posibilidad na baka tumakbo bilang bise ang presidente, di ba? Tapos siyempre, hindi rin maiwasan na ikumpara sa ginagawa ngayon ni Manny Pacquiao na nagpresenta rin ng mga para sa kanya dapat imbestigahan ng Blue Ribbon. So, paano nyo makukumbinsi ang publiko nga na hindi lang ito pag-ingay sa bahagi ninyo?
Alam niyo po, kung first time ko lang to ginagawa, labang kay Duterte, pwede niyo sabihin yan. Pero 2016 pa lang yung kampanya pa lang, ang dami ko na nilabas na issue dito, yung frigate issue, yung 6.4 billion na shabu importation, itong 2.2 billion na bank accounts issue, ang dami kong inilalabas dito, no? Kina Duterte, pati yung sa NFA dati, pati yung GCTA sa Bucor, kumbaga, hindi ito first time, ano? Andito, I've been fighting this fight for the past 5 years, so it's going to be unfair sa akin, especially na parang ano lang ito, ikakabit nyo sa eleksyon. No. I am making sure, in fact, na hindi na makakaulit itong mga ito. Kasi nalusutan nyo na hindi nyo ako pinakinggan noong 2016. Ito tayo ngayon. Talagang ginahasa ni Duterte yung Pilipinas. So ngayon, we will have to make sure na hindi na mangyari ito. And we will shout at the top of our lungs if we need to, para lang hindi mangyari yun.
Well, the other side of it is precisely because you've been doing it all these years, di ba? You have to point out precisely what makes this one different from all the others, no? Because ang pagkakakilala nga sa iyo is lagi ka talagang wala kang ginawa kundi labanan nga yung administrasyon, no? I mean, yan ang naging papel mo, sabihin na natin, ever since Duterte came to power.
And just to point out, I'm sorry if you the other side kasi ng tanong ng mga tao is, sa lahat ng binanggit nyo, natatandaan namin yun. Pero hindi namin natatandaan na may pinuntahan lahat ng mga yon. Apart from, you mentioned 2016. It's an election year. 2019, 2018, heading into 2019, another election year. Here we are again, preparing for and here we are again. Are you saying na lahat yon walang pinuntahan, at hindi nyo matanda kung ano nangyari, only because all of this were under this administration? Because on the other side of it, people are also saying, alam na namin to parang parati naman ganito tuwing eleksyon. Totoo naman marami talaga naglalabasan. Yan din ang paratang kay Senator Manny Pacquiao. And so we head back to that question. In 2016 walang nangyari, 2019 walang nangyari, except for adding to the issues heading into elections.
Okay, iko-correct ko lang po kayo, no? 2016, after the elections, pinursu ko yung 2.2 billion peso bank accounts na yon. Doon ko po i-final yon. At doon winightwash ni Duterte yon. Kaya walang nangyayari nga dito sa mga kasong ito dahil si Duterte ginagamit niya yung kapangyarihan niya at impluensya niya sa mga korte para mawala itong mga ito. Just to cite you an example, yung 6.4 billion peso shabu shipment, lahat ng mga players doon ay konektado sa pamilya ni Duterte. Alam niyo, walang nakasuhan doon sa mga iyon. Tapos, yung nag-dismiss nung kaso kay Faildon, for example, prinomote niya, ginawa niyang judge. Tapos, yung kay Peter Lim, so Present din namin yan, prinomote niya, ginawa niyang judge. Itong Peter Lim, nasaan ito? Nakatakas ito. I don't even remember na election. Lahat naman talaga, every 3 years may election tayo, pero what do you expect me to do? I'm an opposition senator. I'm supposed to call out yung mga anomalya na ganito. Kung conscious ako palagi dyan sa sinasabi niyong issue na yan, wala na akong gagawin. Itong mga ito, hindi na ito malalabas. Yun po.
Senator, in the meantime, medyo naglabas na rin si Senator Manny Pacquiao ng similar accusations of a large-scale corruption in this administration. Ano po yung masasabi niyo so far sa mga nasasabi na ni Senator Pacquiao na mga kaso?
Yun po, regardless of the motivation, dapat wini-welcome natin yan. As taxpayers, as citizens of this country, tignan muna natin yung nilabas na issue bago natin bigyan ng mali siya kung ano man, kung bakit ginagawa yan. Ang tanong, totoo ba ito o hindi? Kung totoo, then we have a problem with the people being accused. Diba? Kasi sila yung nangangalaga ng taxes natin, yung kaba ng bayan. Tapos, iba-brush aside lang natin. Kesyo may ibang motivation yung mga messengers. So I welcome the issues being raised by Senator Manny Pacquiao, pero sa akin dapat diretso niya dun sa pinaka-mastermind. Kasi yung mga yan hindi naman gagalaw yan kung walang basbas nung mastermind. Who is the president,
Well, sinabi niya actually mukhang hindi daw alam ni Presidente yung mga nangyayari. Kasi of course, member pa rin siya ng PDP laban And since we're in the elections already, nabanggit ng Liberal Party si President Kiko Pangilinan na they are willing to have Pacquiao into the Liberals. Ano po yung masasabi niyo? Kasi mukhang dumadami yata yung field ng mga potential presidential bonds. Well, we have to identify the Liberals as opposition, of course. Although it's not part of isang bayan. Ano po yung masasabi niyo sa pagpasok ni Senator Pacquiao potentially or to align himself with forces na defined as opposition?
Okay. Kami po, yung aming grupo, yung Magdalo, ay committed po sa proseso ng isang bayan. So, sino man pipiliin ng isang bayan, yun po ang susuportahan namin. Ang Liberal Party naman po, being a traditional political party, they can pursue whatever they want, but it doesn't mean na susunod kami doon. Yung Liberal Party hindi naman yan yung the opposition, sila? Actually, may mga miyembro sila na nandoon din sa administrasyon. So, iba't ibang ilog ang sinasagwanan nila, pero yung sa amin, kilala namin kung sino yung opposition lang. So, doon lang kami.
Senator, total, nandito na tayo sa proseso ng isang bayan. Again, we'll repeat, you did say kung si Vice President Leni Robredo ang tatakbo, you will step aside for her. But you also said the last time you were here, it's already too late. Frankly, the clock is not only ticking. In your opinion, it's already too late for her to make her position known, which is just to emphasize, your point then was to emphasize na she has to make a clear stand right now. Any update, sir, on as far as you know and as far as you've talked to their parties and to their representatives, where are you now with Leni Robredo and what do you now know of her position heading into 2022?
Nothing has changed based on the public pronouncements na ginagawa ni Vice President. So, kami, tuloy lang kami ng nagawin yung pwede namin gawin given that situation. So, sabi ko nga, just to simplify our decision-making process, kung sino yung manonominate na isang bayan, di yun yung susuportahan po namin.
Sa tingin mo ba nagkaroon ng epekto yung pagkamatay ni President Noynoy Aquino sa pag-iisang, sabihin na natin, sa pag-unify sa opposition na or kung ano man yung mga grupong yun na nagsasama-sama para to fight the administration?
Siguro po ang naging positive effect, no, or silver lining ng pagkamatay ni President Aquino is na-report na-rekindle ng media in particular yung mga mabuting ginawa ni President Aquino during his time. He may not be perfect, pero hindi naman siya ganun kasama, ano? And especially in contrast dito sa administrasyon na to, nakita talaga na napakaraming magandang ginawa si President Aquino na ito ay giniba lang nung propaganda laban sa kanya. So kung ano man ang impact niyan, palagay ko doon sa pag-decline nung itong Duterte administration.
Sir, I'll just go back to your earlier allegations. Yung 6.6 billion po. I'm wondering lang if there's any other elements that you have unearthed or uncovered to go in the direction of plunder, other than blood relations and contacts. I ask that specifically kasi from what I can tell, there's nothing in the law that bars relatives from bidding. If at all, baka 6713 pa yung Code of Conduct for Public Officials, and even then, that's dependent on the positions of the public officials. Kasi in the 30 years that we've had a plunder law since 1991, nobody has ever been convicted just for being a relative of somebody who bagged contracts. Diba? In the end, the courts are looking for connections. How somebody made money and whether procedures were violated.
Okay. Alam niyo po kung bakit wala pang nakukonvict based on their blood relations? Kasi nga po yung mga tiwali, yung mga corrupt na nagpa-plunder, iniikutan pa nila, no? Meron pa silang layer ng cut out para hindi malink sa kanila directly. Pero ito, talagang impunity or in fact stupidity, Kasi talagang pangalan talagang diretso sa tatay at sa kapatid. I've asked lawyers, this is the most airtight plunder case na makikita kasi diretso, pagka na-award ka ng kontrata, magbe-benefit yung tao na yon, Kasi hindi naman pwedeng palugi yung kontrata na yon. So nag-benefit siya. Yung pamilya niya, kasama siya doon. Siya rin yung nag-approve. Kahit gaano natin paikutin ito, lahat ng illegal ay andirito. And sabi ko nga, wala ka nang kailangan ilabas pa. We have the contracts, we have established the blood relations, we have the admission of Bongo, approving authority yung boss niya na si Duterte, nakilala natin, nakita mo, halos sa bawat tumulo lang ng pawis ni Duterte, pupunasan ito. Nakita natin yung proximity nila. Tapos ngayon, i-deny natin na may effect yun? We're talking about 6.6 billion pesos here. This thing did not happen by accident. So, yun po.
Yes, sir. I understand, sir. But also kasi it's a principle in law. I understand your point of view na there's something that seems to be inappropriate in getting all these contracts, at least on the surface. But in the end, in the courts, you will have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. And that will have to go beyond I suppose, yung making connections between blood relations and the fact that contracts were acquired.
Well, alam mo, Ed, dito kasi yung elements defined. Defined yung elements at saka na-meet niya lahat yung elements. So, ito na yun. Yung proof beyond reasonable doubt, andito ginawa niya smoking gun yung mga kontrata. Kasi you're not supposed to do that. Kasi kung hindi to bawal, imagine nyo how absurd this plunder law is. Kung hindi ito bawal, yung tipong sasabihin mo lang, wala naman akong kinalaman dyan sa tatay ko. Nakuha niya fair and square.
Pero sir, di ba maraming ganun talaga?
Huh?
So sorry, pero di ba maraming ganun talaga yung mga official na yung mga kamag-anak nila may contract sa gobyerno?
May dami sila. May dami, pero ito directly hawak nung approving authority, sakop by virtue of his position, covered sila yung nag-approve. Ito yung sinabi sa akin ng mga abogado, this is it. All the elements of Plunder have been met. And si Bonggol na ang magpapaliwanag nito sa korte.
You think it's also a smoking gun against the president himself? Kasi medyo mahirap-hirap
Yes.
yata yun.
Definitely, with consent ito eh. Talagang, kung ano ito, sindikato itong ginawa nila. Body-body sila eh. Akala nila siguro, nung mayor pa lang si Duterte, nung binibigay niya ito dun sa pamilya ni Bongo, incognito naman si Bongo at that time, so okay lang, hindi na sisilip, hindi nakapangalan kay Duterte. But when they rose into prominence, tapos si Bongo nagkaroon na ng official title as special assistant, talagang maliwanag na to. So sila ang kasama rito, kasama yung sinasabi nito, yung mga DPWH na nag-approve nito at all the rest. Kaya nga I give all credit doon sa COA, no, na talagang kinuha nila ito, ibinigay nila to sa amin.
Okay.
Nung may panahon pa.
Okay. Former Senator Antonio Trillanes, maraming salamat po. And,
Thank you, sir.
and we will continue to monitor this story, but before we go into GAP, we would like to note that our program is open to accommodate the President or Senator Bongo if they would accept our invitation to guest on the Chiefs to give their side on these fresh allegations from former Senator Trillanes. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs. I'm Robbie Alampay. With me online are Ami Pamintuan, Lucy Cruz Valdez, and Ed Lingao. And now joining us is Dr. Ana Ong Lim of the DOH Technical Advisory Group. Dr. Ong Lim is also a member of the Health Professionals Alliance Against COVID-19. Good evening once again, Dr. Ong Lim.
Good evening, Doc.
Hindi po.
Good evening po.
Ma'am, it's been a long time. Para bang simula nung huli namin kayong gines, nagsidamihan yung mga variants. Let's start with that. I know we've been following the Delta variant, pero alam namin there's another one at least in the horizon. Ilang variants po ba ang binabantayan natin ngayon?
Well, kasi when we talk about variants, they're classified into two categories. You have your variants of concern and variants of interest. Yung variants of concern, yung kilala natin, si Alpha, si Beta,
Gamma
si
and Delta.
Gamma and Delta.
Oh.
Yung
Gusto yung
remaining,
fraternities natin.
oo nga, medyo dumami na sila. Pero yung iba, yung mga nababalitaan natin ngayon, they're called variants of interest. And the main difference really is the variants of concern have already been demonstrated to have more profound effects, like being more transmissible, or might be associated with decreased severity, and so on. Whereas yung variants of interest, medyo binabantay-bantayan pa lang natin for those features.
Okay.
So, ang inaalala po ngayon, doctor, kung anong impact niyan sa vaccination. Kasi meron tayong mga parang mga breakthrough cases ng infections ngayon among some fully vaccinated individuals. Merong mga ganong report. So nag-aalala mga tao Ano pong masasabi niya about those concerns?
It's very natural, no, to um, be worried about the effect of vaccines on any um, mutation for any virus. That's actually the reason why, for example, for our flu vaccines, every year, di ba, ina-advise tayong magpabakuna ulit dahil those very slight changes that affect the structure of the virus makes or has an impact on how effective the vaccine is. Currently, the impact of the vaccine on the different variants of concern has been demonstrated. So meron namang mga information na nagsasabi na nababawasan ng bahagya yung effectiveness ng bakuna for particular variants. However, sa ngayon, yung general consensus is that these variations or these decreases are typically not huge naman to the point na mawawala na talaga ng bisa yung bakuna at hindi na natin siya gagamitin.
Kasi, I mean, fortunately, we're
What do we
starting
know
out from a
about
base.
the Lambda variant?
Go ahead, Bok. Sorry.
The Lambda variant? Yes, doctor.
Okay. Ma'am, what
So
do we know about the
the
Lambda
Lambda
variant? Kasi Malaysia was saying daw that that it's more, what was the phrasing that they used here? It's more deadly than all the others. That's at least according to the
Sa
Malaysian
Peru.
Ministry of Health.
Okay. Kasi si Lambda variant actually has been part of the WHO listing since it's been known or it's been identified since last year, since December of last year. And it became part of the WHO listing last month, last June, no? And it's been designated as a variant of interest because it's already been identified to cause community transmission or clusters, and it's already being picked up in different countries. So parang about 30 as of the last count. So, pero beyond that, and perhaps yung pinaka-feature niya is increased transmissibility, wala nang ibang masyado pang information regarding whether it's actually going to cause more severe disease or more deaths. And in fact, dahil nga nakadesignate pa lang din siya as variant of interest, parang hindi pa established yung virulence niya as opposed to, for example, yung alpha o yung beta o yung delta.
So variant of interest pa lang, hindi pa siya variant of concern, unlike the others
Yes,
that
yes, it's
we've
not a
already
variant
discovered
of concern. I guess.
Doc,
Correct, correct.
what do you say about these reports that say that the death rate from COVID in the Philippines is higher than actually most countries in the world? No? That we actually have one of the highest rates of mortality. I mean, do the numbers actually support this contention? Lumabas yan sa mga balita Parang we're at 1 point something percent relative to the global average, which is below 1.
Well, if I just do the computations, no, so bali we are about, let's say 25,000 deaths na lang,
Deaths,
just
no?
rounding
Yes.
off, out of 1.4 million, tama? Parang as of today.
So far,
So if
yeah.
you divide na, oo. So actually, if you think about it, hindi tayo, alam mo, for a health system that is in our league, I wouldn't say that that's a very bad rate, no? We are actually, so 1.8%.
Yeah, because the global average nga raw is below 1. So they're saying ours is really unusually high, no? Kumbaga, it's double the global average. What could account for that? I mean, I just wonder, is it because are there more elderly or vulnerable people, vulnerable to death at least from COVID? Ganun.
Siguro if you consider the fact that we have had, well, two surges, no, and the most recent one actually did quite a bit of damage in a way kasi dun talaga dumami yung ating deaths and our cases. I guess parang over time, again, this will average out as the reproduction number decreases a little bit. Our profiles for mortality are not different from the ones that are seen in other parts of the world. We also have most of our deaths occurring in the elderly or in those with comorbidities.
Same, no? Yes.
It's the same pattern. So I guess, ang importante nga kasi, di ba, as we are talking now about ramping up immunizations and as more and more of the other categories are actually being offered the vaccine, hindi talaga pwedeng mapag-iwanan yung A2 and A3 risk groups natin. Kasi doon talaga tayo dapat mag-focus para makaiwas doon sa mas malaking burden sa healthcare system.
Baka yung ano rin yun, Doc, no? Nung nagsusurge, remember, ang daming hindi ma-admit sa mga hospitals. So, kumbaga naiwan na lang, I mean, I guess left to die in a sense, no? Could it have been that? Which I guess points to the need talaga to make sure that hospital critical care, kumbaga, is a major thrust, no, in the handling or management of COVID in the country.
Well, yes, no. I think even as we're seeing a little bit of a lull here in the NCR, we should really be making good use of our break in a way to make sure that
Yes.
our capacity is always up to par or even more. Kasi in a way, hindi naman natin may iwasan na magkaroon pa ng variant or at some point dumami na naman yung mga kaso. Pero wala na tayong dapat sisihin kundi sarili natin kung hindi pa natin in-improve yung capacity kung kailan meron tayong panahon. And also, no, na sulitin yung protective capability ng vaccines at siguraduhin na everybody who can be vaccinated is vaccinated para the next time something like this comes around, ready tayo.
Doc, anong latest developments, advice when it comes to vaccination for the youth, people below 18, below 15 years old? Ano yung latest? What do we now understand? What's the trend in other countries that are starting to experiment? Are we seeing data on that? And what might be the prognosis for us in terms of inoculating our young people as well?
We're getting to see countries that have the capacity and have, in a way, saturated their adult population, no, to start vaccinating their adolescents because the pockets of disease resurgence are affecting their unvaccinated populations, including the teenagers. So it makes sense for them kasi meron naman silang excess vaccine, pwede na nilang i-deploy dun sa age group na yon. So we're hoping na sana umabot din tayo sa ganyang klaseng situation na we will have enough so that even the adolescents will get to be vaccinated. Pero as I said kanina, kailangan pa talaga natin pag-igihin yung A2 at A3 and hanggat hindi natin yung nagagawa, kahit na bakunahan mo pa bawat teenager na pwedeng magpabakuna, hindi pa rin magkakaroon ng magandang impact sa healthcare utilization natin kung magkaroon na naman tayo ng surge. Kasi sino ba mau-hospital? Diba? Yung mga may edad, yung mga may comorbidities.
In fact, ang problem ngayon, Doctor, in the countries that have started administering vaccines sa mga bata, they use Pfizer and Moderna, di ba? Yun lang naman yung approve eh. Kaya lang nagkakaproblema ngayon, there are stories of cardiac problems involving children. And today, merong story, yung 13-year-old in the US na namatay from that heart problem associated with the Pfizer shot. So they're still investigating it, but it's similar to what's happening in Israel. And I think in the UK, kaya may problema. But in the meantime, ang tanong ko, sinabi kasi ng Malacanang, we've vaccinated 12, we've administered 12 million doses, so they are seriously considering again yung resumption of limited face-to-face classes. Sa tingin nyo, this is a good idea at this point na kumakalat na naman tungkol na anong variant na to?
So siguro to clarify, no, although the news seems to be alarming, wala pa naman tayong na-detect na lambda according to RPGC data. And awa ng Diyos, so far ang Delta has been coming in through, or the detection of Delta has been confined to returning travelers. So mukhang wala pa tayong community transmission. Yun namang pinag-uusapan about resumption of face-to-face classes is really directed towards those areas with very good control of transmission. So, hindi naman sa lahat. And medyo ang discussion natutuon dun sa pilot areas, pilot schools. So, hindi pa naman talaga ide-declare na by September or August, bukas na ang lahat ng klase. So, phased na naman ulit. Katulad nung pagbubukas ng mga retail establishments in the past, na inunti-unti talaga. Kasi nga, we're always concerned na pag binigla natin at mag-increase ng husto yung mobility, syempre kasunod talaga nun, dadami ang kaso, hindi yan maiiwasan.
Pero ngayon, Doc, papayagan na raw nila yung interzonal travel, no?
Yeah.
For those who are vaccinated. What do you think of this move? Is this, I mean, will we be able to manage that? Nakakapraning talaga yung mga surge, no? But because we know that vaccination does not really prevent transmission, and yet we're now saying that people can now engage in interzonal travel, that's what they call it, without undergoing an RT-PCR, but just presenting their proof of vaccination.
Well, that's coming from the thinking that if you're vaccinated and you've already gone beyond the 2-week interval post your second dose, that the likelihood of you actually transmitting the viral load that you might have, if you happen to be infected, will be lower than somebody who's not infected. And typically kasi, kung vaccinated ka, mas mild din yung symptoms. So yun yung theoretical, hypothetical basis nun. Kaya siya kino-consider. Syempre medyo din, binabantayan ng husto yung datang yan. I guess in a way, yun, mga measured loosening of restrictions and then monitoring the data very carefully para kung sakasakalit makita natin na hindi pa natin kaya na ganun ang gawin, there's always the option naman to try to rein it in and see how else to modify para naman mabalanse natin yung freedoms na pwede na natin ibigay dun sa mga bakunado at yung impact nun sa transmission.
Hindi ba dapat ikuno natin yung vaccination cards? Iba-iba eh. Pati yung mga ospital may kanya-kanyang vaccination card. Pati yung site.
Mamaya fake na yan, ano?
Ang dali-dali pa
Yes,
yung LGU, LGU from one LGU, iba-iba. Tapos kanya-kanya pa yung mga hospitals na mga form. Wala man lang mga
That's right, no?
Mark.
Yes,
Paano naman yun?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. No, I think that's a really big challenge to the system that we have to have cards or parang a database that allows validation that people really were vaccinated
Yes.
and already completed their 2 doses and are already 2 weeks beyond their last dose before we say that we allow them less restrictions, no? Tama, no? It's really a big concern. Iba-iba yun sa hospitals, iba-iba yun sa mga LGUs, and DICT is the one that's tasked, no, to actually work on this. And from what I understand, they already have a system in place, and they're asking the LGUs actually to upload the data into their system so that kahit iba-iba yung cards, at least meron kang pwedeng puntahan na database para ma-validate kung tama nga ba yung information na pinapresent nung traveler or nung tao na nagpe-presenta ng card.
Yung bang specter ng Delta, ganun pa rin kalakas ngayon sa atin? I just wonder because parang, well, previously there was a report na low risk na raw tayo, although si Secretary Herring has said that that shouldn't really be the mindset, no, na low risk na ngayon ang bansa. Pero having said that, I just wonder how much of a specter is Delta still? Or kahit pa paano ba bumababa na yun? Yung umihina na ba yun? Hard to say.
Well, kasi Delta continues to spread globally. And as with the other variants that we've had experience with, pagka nakapasok kasi siya, medyo difficult, no, na bantayan at makaiwas sa community spread. So, dahil ang situation natin ngayon is wala pa tayong community transmission, lahat ng mga nakita nating Delta variant detections have been coming from travelers, talagang doon tayo nakafocus. Ayaw na nating malusutan tayo kasi alam naman natin yung experience ng ibang bansa na naka-encounter ng Delta, kumalat ka agad eh. So, ba't pa natin sila gagayahin, di ba?
In the meantime, Doc, I'm just curious, beyond the virus itself, the situation outside of NCR. When we talked to Okta Research last week, basically, sabi niya, bumaliktad na yung ratio. It used to be the majority here. Now they're saying NCR only accounts for 25%. 75% is now spread out outside of... talk to us about, the readiness and the capacity of our people and our frontliners outside of NCR. What are you seeing on that front?
Well, siguro talking now from the lens of somebody who's involved with HPAC, no, the Healthcare Professionals Alliance, we've had opportunities to talk to frontliners in other regions, and there's certainly sending out distress calls as well. No? Yung naramdaman natin dito na overwhelmed yung healthcare system dun sa kanilang areas, very stretched yung healthcare professionals na nag-a-attend sa mga pasyente, ganun din yung experience. So, as the professional medical societies, what we've been trying to do is to capacitate them, no? Give them material that they can use to guide them in management of patients, advise them to be more, how do we put this, utilize their resources, no, more carefully, in the sense na yung mga severe and critical yung i-prioritize ng ospital, yung mga mild moderate nasa bahay, no. The same strategies that worked with us, we're trying to download to them para hindi na sila nagre-reinvent ng wheel. Pero syempre, importante pa rin bigyan sila ng reinforcements kasi in the end, kung bibigay na yung katawan mo dahil hindi ka pagod ka na sa dami ng pasyenteng tinitignan mo, kailangan, ang katapat pa rin talaga nun, kailangan mo ng dagdag tao.
Doctor, with the variants still spreading, there's a increased talk now na about saka yung mga breakthrough cases, there's talk about the need for booster shot. You think mga 6 months ahead, we will be needing booster shots, yung mga na fully vaccinated na?
It's really very hard to say kasi ang daming variables. No? Unang-una, iba-iba yung mga bakunang natanggap ng mga tao, not just in the Philippines, but different parts of the world. No? And our exposures are very different. Merong mga bansa na kalat itong variant na ito, yung ibang bansa naman, hindi. So, siguro what I can say is, it's recognized na at some point kailangan magka-booster. So we're trying to generate our own data here locally. And I don't know if you've heard that there's already a study being planned to look at boosters for, Sinovac primarily kasi marami tayong na-deploy na Sinovac. No? So after 2 doses of Sinovac, meron silang mga parang different groups that we will be looking at to be given boosters of different vaccines to see how that will affect their antibody responses.
Different branch. This study is ongoing na.
It's been approved, no? So it should be starting up very shortly.
Doc, last na lang. In the meantime, habang nandito tayo and we're praying for things to get better and we're seeing some things getting better and people are more optimistic, we're also seeing a lot of public events, mass gatherings, sporting events, even concerts in other countries. On the one hand, people will say, sana all. On the other hand, we're seeing states like California reconsidering bringing back masks, having to walk back some of their openings. Just your very candid impression when you see these things going on abroad, and then you're hearing about some upticks in certain countries, in certain areas. What's your general gut feel or gut fear? Do you think some countries are opening up too fast, and or at the very least, what are some immediate lessons we can see even now from some of the countries that are already opening up to these mass events?
Ako, I tend to take a more conservative approach kasi ang hirap bawiin pagka dumami na naman yung mga kaso. Nakadalawang ganun na tayo di ba? Nung nakaraang taon, nung August, tapos itong very recently, nung April. Gusto pa ba natin ito maulit? Kailan pa ba tayo matututo? No? So, I guess yung kinakampante ng ibang mga bansa na nagsimula ng mag-loosen ng restrictions, yung pinangahawakan nila is marami na silang nabakunahan. And I guess that's a fairly valid basis, no? Because that was our hope for vaccinations anyway, that if you are able to cover the majority of your population, then you can loosen your restrictions because you're able to control transmission in a way and also severity of disease and death rates. Pero sa atin kasi sa Pilipinas, ano ba ang meron natin? 10 million out of 110 million population. Wala pa sa kalingkingan. So medyo, kung iniisip natin, gagayahin na natin sila, medyo wag muna tayo masyadong magmadali. Unless madaliin pa natin yung bakuna, lahat pa nang pwede magpabakuna, please go. Yun parati ang message, di ba?
Okay. Dr. Ana Ong Lim of the DOH Technical Advisory Group, maraming salamat po.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Doc.
Thank you,
Doc.
ma'am.
Thank you.
And that will be all for this special edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.